In today's video, I'm going to talk about 3D printing. Don't worry, there's a good resin for it. We're going to talk about 3D printing this time. Why? Well, I've had a lot of conversations recently with friends and colleagues and general people on the internet that have a perception of 3D printing, especially in the hobby space, and how it relates to our hobby. More importantly, is it worth your hobby time? And really importantly, is it worth your hobby money? Well then, 3D printing. What's it all about? It's been around for a while now. Personally, I've been into it for around 5 years now. I started off with a simple 3D printer, absolutely knowing nothing, and now I've got several 3D printers and still don't know very much about it. It is a hobby unto itself. 3D printing, what is it? Well, it's a couple of things, isn't it? We've got two different types, the two different main types of 3D printing. So, on one hand, we've got FDM printing. That's your classic laying down of layers, plastic building up over time. It's pretty common nowadays, really good for functional prints, really good for prototyping, engineering stuff, and that's what really interested me in it. So I do use it, and I use it in my hobby a little bit, not as much as I used to, but I have kind of started to involve it a little bit more in what I'm doing. In my wargaming, used mostly for scenery, but I do use it in one of my other hobbies where I make add-on kits for Transformers, so it's really good for that. We'll talk about it a little bit more later. And on the other hand, we've got SLA, stereolithography apparatus, or resin printing to the rest of us. There are a couple of different standards, there's DLP as well, but you know, we'll just talk about resin printing and PLA. Okay, cool. So resin printing is probably much bigger in the hobby space at the moment. You'll have seen a whole slew of things kicking around, Kickstarter, Patreons, some amazing stuff out there. And it's becoming more and more popular within inside of our hobby space. And with that, there's been more and more people talking about it, which is a great thing. It's an absolutely brilliant thing. However, talking about something and understanding what it is you're talking about, those are two different things. And that's what's kind of motivated me to put together this video, because I think it's important that we understand a couple of, how can I put it? A couple of the eccentricities of 3D printing and how that can impact on you as a hobbyist, and how that could impact on you as a potential 3D printer yourself. So, now we've kind of covered the base of what it is we're going to talk about. Let's talk about it in a little bit more detail. This could go on a while. You may want to get yourself a cuppa. Or a pint. Or several. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about my background, what got me into 3D printing. Like I said, I've been into the space for about 5 years now, and it sits alongside my hobby of wargaming and miniature collecting and figure collecting in general. Standard nerdery. So, when I first got into it, what really interested me was the fact that I could print parts out myself. Obviously, it goes without saying that's what 3D printing is. What I wanted to do was create my own stuff. I didn't want to download other people's bits and pieces and do that, because I can buy things like that. I didn't see much point. It was the making stuff myself, the custom side of things, which is really at the heart of what 3D printing should be it engineering, hobby like we do, or anything else. Now, that's where the difficult part comes in. Creating your own 3D files and printing them out and having that innate understanding. There's an inherent cost in that. Sure, there's a slew of free tools. One of the major investments is time. Now, I don't know about you, but that's something that I don't have a lot of myself. So if you're getting into the hobby, or you're coming into 3D printing, and you get coming in off the back of all of these awesome Kickstarters out there, things like Titan Forge, thinking, oh yeah, I can just download something and print it out. Pre-supported models. That's a thing. That's super easy. Well, let me tell you something, guys. It's really not. It's frustrating. It's soul destroying. At times, it's just not even worth it for me. And maybe that's different for you, but the amount of time and effort you've got to put into something like that to get the really good results, even the pre-supported models, it's quite significant. But it's not all doom and gloom. I'm gonna flash some things around on the screen, little bits that I've been working on, things that I've created myself, and talk about the highs and the lows that I've had, both in the past and fairly recently. One of my friends quite recently asked me if I'd do him a favour and print him something out. Absolutely, of course, he's my friend, I want to help him out. Not a problem. This little guy here, it's a gun mount apparently for some Necron Stalker. And it doesn't look overly complicated. So he sent me over the file that he found on Thingiverse, I think it was, and asked me if I'd print it out for him. Sure. That's one of the things that gets said to me a lot. Just print it out. Well guys, I don't know where the perceptions come from that it's just as simple as you've got a 3D printer, just print this out. That 100% is not the case. So let me take you through this. I got the file. Fine, great. It's in the format I can work with. Not a problem at all. Opened it up into G2 Box. Had a look at it. Fine, doesn't look overly complicated. So, what do I do then? Got to create support. Now, in my experience, what I found is that any software that wants to create auto support is not going to do a particularly good job, if I'm honest. It's less of a problem with FDM printing, but with resin printing, you can run into a whole boatload of issues that can actually damage your printer. Now, when you're doing that, it's not quite as simple as just grabbing that model. It's not quite as simple as just like popping that in, rotating it around and thinking, oh, this way looks good, this will print the best, and then banging some supports on it. I thought it was. It's really not. Understanding how to best support a model so that you get the minimum damage off of it when you remove it from the build plate. Now, yes, you can half-arse it. I spent a lot of time learning how to make supports, and yes, you can do it a little bit simpler. You can have less supports, but understanding what it is you're doing before you do something is something I feel very passionate about. You should not do something the fast and easy way until you understand how to do it the proper way. And it's only then that you can really appreciate that sometimes those fast and easy ways don't get you the best results. Why did it take me so long then? What went wrong? Well, let me tell you. I had several failed prints. I can't remember if it was 5 or 6 failed prints. Each one of those prints failed for a different reason. It was a trial and error situation for me. So my workflow is I bring it into G2 Box, I orient it, I rotated it so I got to a reasonable angle, and I created the support. That took me a couple of hours. So as you see in the time lapse, it's not the best time lapse of my workflow, and that was the original one before I optimized the support. You know, creating your own support profile can take quite a while as well. So I won't go into the minutiae of everything, but I created the support, export it, slice it, take it into another piece of software, because G2 Box isn't the greatest for finding islands. So what islands are, is if you're printing something out and there's a little bit of an overhang, how the printer actually works is it sets each layer at a time. And if you've got nothing supporting something, it can't print it. So you end up with a little bit of resin floating around in the tank. That's not good because it can get in the way of something else, cause defect, it can set to the FEP film, cause a whole slew of problems. So you've got to make sure every little part of the model is supported. Now, automatically, you would think that'd be quite a simple problem to solve. It seems it's not, which I'll link to down below, which basically lets me import that sliced model and then lets me go through it layer by layer and see if there's anything that's going to cause any problems in printing. If there is, which there was, I have to bring that back into the slicer, make sure it's supported. Do that for every one of those layers. Some models have a couple of hundred layers, some can have several thousand, depending on the height and depending on your layer height that you're printing at. Lower layer height means higher resolution print, much better finish, slower print time. That backwards and forwards process took me a good while, good chunk of time, like I say. So take that to my printer, print it out. It failed, caused problems, didn't stick to the plate. So, okay, you would think just straight back into the software, make the tweaks, do the whole process again. Not quite that simple. It failed. There were bits of stuff floating around in the resin, so I had to empty the vat, strain the vat, put it all back together, clean it out, make sure the FEP wasn't damaged, put it back in, take it into the software, do the old export again, back on the print, wait for it to print out. Has it failed? Yes, it has. Stuff floating in there again. Right, need to do it again. So clean the vat, take it into the software, yada yada, rinse and repeat. Finally, I got a version that worked that I was happy with and printed out completely. It's not the best quality. It's workable, I think, but that entire process took me literally around 24 hours of effort to get it to work, which great. Now I've got it, now it works, I can just knock them out. Should you want any more at any point? Yeah, not a problem, absolutely. But that process there, that takes time and effort, and nobody seems to be talking about that. It's great when it goes right, but when it goes wrong, do you really have time to be doing that? Would it be easy to just go and buy one off the shelf if you can? Scour eBay or places like that where we can find bits? It probably would be, to be honest. But it's not as much fun. There are the highs, but there's also the lows. It sounds like it's all doom and gloom, doesn't it? It's not. It's honestly not. But the time, the effort, the additional cost of all the other things that you've got. And that takes away from your actual hobby time. And if you do your hobby to relax, to unwind, to have fun, to play games, the perceived cost saving of having a 3D printer can really impact on that. So you've got to add that into your calculation of, is it worth it? And I don't know, if it is worth it for you, maybe you think that is. What else have we got to talk about with it then? The time involved. But I hear you say, just buy pre-supported models, get on the Patreon or something. And I do. But what's the problem there? And just as this video is going to come out, one of the major suppliers of those models, Titanforge, has taken a really bold step. They've said, we realised the problem with the pre-supported models, that yeah, they're pre-supported, but they are not easy to print unless you have a good understanding of how to tune your printer. And them saying that is a huge step forward. So maybe in the future this won't be an issue, but I think from November, possibly the December release, their Patreon models are going to ship with 3 different types of model. They're going to have the raw model that you can support yourself, which is what I do. It will have the Pro supported model, which will give you really, really good support that will leave you with a stunning, clean miniature, but it is harder to print. And then they're going to have the quick play, or whatever they're going to call it, version of that model, where it is going to be pre-supported, with much less aggressive support, that will give you a good result, and probably a really good result in fact, but it requires much less fine-tuning of your printer and dialing in of those settings to get the actual model to print. Now that is a really good step forward, and it's pretty much The reason why I choose to do my supports manually myself when I print anything out, I do subscribe to their Patreon, and it's some amazing models, and I really do love them. Having that is a great bonus and probably worth the money. I mean, for the cost of a couple of coffees a month, you're getting some amazing minis that you can print out as many times as you want, in theory. There seems to be a perception that's maybe come from something like Star Trek, where you see Captain Picard going up to a replicator and say, T, L Grey, hot. It's like, you walk up to your 3D printer and you're like, Intercessor, Dark Angel, painted. And this model, stunningly brilliant print quality, just appears out of nowhere like magic, and it'd be like, oh yes, that's what I want. But it's not the case, guys. It's not. You've got to find the model, prepare it, do the support, slice it, all that thing, bang it on the resin printer. If you do get it to print, and hopefully you will, it'll print really, really well, but then you've got to get it off of the printer, get it into your baths of IPA or whatever it is you're using to clean it all, take the supports off, cure it under a UV light or wait for it to be a sunny day. So guys, you see where I'm coming from. There's so much more to consider to this entire thing than just it being a fun additional thing to have in your hobby. It's a hobby in itself. There's a lot of learning, a lot of time and a lot of effort that you've got to put in to get those best results. Is it the be all and end all? Is it the future of the hobby? Right now, I'm not entirely sure it is. Well then, now all the doom and gloom's out of the way. I would have really found something like this useful. I'm not telling people not to do it, because that is entirely the opposite of what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to say is, if you do think that this might be something that you want, understand what it is you're getting into. Full circle then, let's answer the question. Is 3D printing worth it in the hobby? Well, that depends on you. Yes and no. Do you value your hobby time? Are you limited in the time that you can spend hobbying? Is that time really valuable to you? Or is it something that you like to flit around in? Sometimes you don't mind building the model, painting the model, figuring stuff out like this. If that's the case, and you don't mind that, absolutely get in on this, guys. It's super fun, and when it works, and when you understand what's happening, and you can get consistent, good results, it is absolutely stunning. It's even more fun if you start making your own bits. That I found obscenely rewarding. There is no other feeling like taking something off of your printer and having something that works the first time. You made the measurements correctly, you modeled it right, you did the simulations, and yeah, it's working, and you are like, you're doing like, oh, it is exciting, I am telling you this so bad. Yes. Great, do it, absolutely 100%. Support people on Patreon. There's some amazing artists out there throwing out some crazy nuts models that only a couple of years ago you would be paying like big money to get these from like artists and model suppliers, and now you can just download them a lot of the time for free. If you can pay for stuff though, I highly recommend you do and support those guys back, because we want more epic stuff in the hobby. You shouldn't get into it if your time is very limited and precious and you just want to relax and you expect something that's just going to work. You've got some facts now. The choice really is with you if it's something that you want to experiment in, and I strongly recommend, if you have the time and the opportunity to do so, you do, because it is rewarding. It really, really is. But it's also hugely frustrating and angering. I'd rather be painting, to be honest. But am I going to get rid of my 3D printers? Hell no, I'm not. I absolutely love printing models and painting from a resin printer. I love printing bits out that I can use from my FDM printers. It's a great hobby, but that's what it is. It is definitely a hobby within a hobby. And there we have it. Is it good? Is it bad? You've got to decide, but at least you've got a little bit more knowledge to make that decision with yourself now. So, if you did get some value for this, do me a solid, leave me a like, hit that subscribe button, nuke it if you want, exterminate it if you must, but it really helps the channel out. It helps me feel encouraged and hopefully make content that's useful to a community that's given me so much. I want to give back to it. And that's all there is to be said. So, until next time guys, remember, if you're going to do crack, make sure it's plastic. See ya!